In this video, we're going to review writing thesis statements. This is certainly not your first time hearing about or learning about thesis statements, but I wanted to point out a few things in the definition here. First, you can see in the gray box, you have a simple definition of your thesis statement. A simple sentence, it's just one sentence that expresses the writer's position or opinion on a particular subject. Usually this sentence will go as in the introduction paragraph, it'll be the last sentence, and then it will be repeated in the conclusion as the first sentence. The key point here is that whatever you are stating in the thesis statement is what the remainder of your essay is about and what you will support with evidence from the text or evidence from your own experiments or experience, depending on what kind of essay you're writing. In the additional explanation of a thesis statement, I've highlighted a few words for you to pay special attention to. The first word to focus on in here is prove. The thesis is expressing an idea that the speaker or writer intends to prove. Prove is an important word to remember because your thesis must include what we call an opinion or an argument, or another word for it is an assertion. This is something that you are going to prove in your essay. The next word I want you to focus on is the word evidence, because the evidence is what you'll be using to prove your opinion or assertion. It says that the purpose of a speech or essay may be to justify a thesis by using evidence. So this evidence is what we call the concrete detail. This is the information you take directly from the text to prove your ideas, to prove your opinion. The last word I want you to focus on is the word structure, because that's the other purpose of a thesis statement. It's going to provide the structure for the remainder of your essay. If you're writing a 5-paragraph essay with 3 body paragraphs, you will be stating in your thesis statement the 3 topics of those body paragraphs. So whatever order you state those 3 topics in is the order in which those paragraphs will appear in your essay. You need to choose what is the best way to organize those ideas. Some people choose by order of importance. They start with the least and end with the most important idea. In some cases, you may choose to use a chronological order, meaning that you list or give the information that occurred first, and then those that occurred last or at the end of a text as your last ideas or last body paragraph. So let's move on and look at how we write a thesis statement, and in additional videos you can see how that sentence then can turn into topic sentences, closing sentences, and body paragraphs. Well, this shouldn't look new to you. We've reviewed this before. You have this in your writing folder. This is explaining what 3 components are necessary for a thesis statement when you're responding to literature. You must have the abstract subject. We reviewed the abstract literary elements, your opinion about the subject, and the concrete element. We've also reviewed the literary devices that are considered concrete literary devices. You're going to explain how concrete elements in a text impact, lead to, reveal, show, portray, convey, any of those marker verbs, the abstract portion of your essay. When you are asked to write a thesis statement for a literary analysis essay, there are 2 situations you might find yourself in. One is where you have a prompt, and the prompt provides the concrete and abstract elements that you were supposed to write about. Or the other situation is that you don't have a prompt, or the prompt is vague. Maybe it gives you just the concrete or just the abstract, but not both. You will have to choose which concrete and or abstract elements you will write about. So I'm going to show you how to write your thesis statement for both of these situations. Here's a sample prompt that identifies the abstract and the concrete elements. Analyze in an essay how figurative language reveals foreshadowing in the short story Charles. The next step with this kind of prompt is to identify what the abstract and concrete elements are. In the case of this prompt, figurative language is our concrete element and foreshadowing is the abstract. When you are given this much information in the prompt, the best thing to do is to simply restate it as a declarative sentence. Here you can see a very simple example where we've basically just restated what was in the prompt. In the short story Charles, foreshadowing is revealed by figurative language. There are ways, however, to elaborate on that a little bit more, especially if you're thinking of writing an essay that has more than one body paragraph, because this thesis statement only suggests that we're going to have one body paragraph. So we were able to elaborate a little bit on this one by asking what kind of figurative language. So I added similes and metaphors. In the short story, Charles, foreshadowing is revealed through similes and metaphors. This is a little more specific. It will give your reader a little more understanding of what you're going to write about, and this suggests that now we're going to have two possible body paragraphs, one that will focus on similes and another that will focus on metaphors. Anytime you can be more specific in your thesis statement, you should. Next, we're going to review how to write a thesis statement when you are not given the concrete and abstract elements in your prompt. In the case of this prompt, we are only given the abstract element. Analyze ways in which the tone is created in Charles. This is vague. We know we're going to write about tone in the story Charles, but other than that, we need to figure it out for ourselves. In this type of situation, you're going to have done a complete analysis before you can write your thesis statement. Okay, so here's our very simple and basic thesis statement. In the short story Charles, the tone is created through irony. Can you think of a way to elaborate on this thesis a little bit more? Think about what we did in the top thesis statement. I think the best way to elaborate here is to explain what the tone is. The ironic tone is created through irony. You could also maybe elaborate a little bit on the word irony itself. What in the story was ironic? What were the examples of irony? Here you can see I've added, instead of just using the word irony, the most ironic situation of the story. In the short story Charles, the ironic tone is created through the fact that there is no Charles in Laurie's kindergarten class. You could also include other events that related or showed irony. For example, when the parents were criticizing Charles's mother, or when the dad gave his advice, which was really for himself. This last example shows a very vague prompt. Write an analysis of Charles. It's rare that you'll see a prompt this vague while you are in middle school or high school, but as you get older and your writing gets more advanced, this is definitely possible. Again, in this type of writing situation, you would have to already have completed your analysis of the short story. You would have to already know what concrete elements have led the reader to understanding the abstract elements, and you would have to decide which ones would be best to write about. In the case of Charles, a really good example to write about would be how conflicts reveal the theme. So you'd have to think about which conflicts in particular you would want to write about, and what exactly is the theme that was being revealed. Here's our first try at a thesis statement. In the short story Charles, the theme, children without discipline will eventually rebel, was revealed through the conflicts. Now, before I go ahead and do it, can you think about how we can elaborate on this? How can we make this thesis statement one for a clear 5-paragraph essay? Did it occur to you to be more specific with the conflicts? I was more specific here. In the short story Charles, the theme, children without discipline will eventually rebel, was revealed through Laurie's conflict with kindergarten, Laurie's parents' conflict with Laurie, and Laurie's conflict with his attitude towards school. There is a great thesis statement. All right. After this, you should be ready to write your own thesis statement. As you begin to write your thesis statements on your own, remember you can always use this thesis statement template. This makes it easy to fill in the blanks with the information that you've gathered from your analysis. And remember, too, that you can always reorganize or restate or rephrase this information. You don't have to begin with in title of work, author's name. You can move all of the information around as long as you're expressing the same idea. This template, remember, also is in your writing folder, and it's also available on Schoology in the writing resources. Good luck!